In this video, I've compiled 19 wood DIYs from furniture flips to handmade pieces for you to get inspiration heading on into 2024. People, this Scrapwood project was a hot mess. It wasn't for my lack of trying. Oh no, I gave this my best go. I put some stain art in here, did some blending, I took some extras, different colors, I popped some different things. I just wanted to paint some pretty dandelions with a little bit of a 3D effect, okay, with some cool stuff in the background. But oh no, that's not where this went, and that's not how this turned out. Now let's go back and start this story back at the beginning. Look at this beautiful piece of 1x8, okay? It's a little fresh, it's a little too clean for me, a little too shined up. So I decided to clamp the sucker down and bring in our hammer so we can make this a little worn. You know what I'm saying? Just beat up the board just a little bit, you know, just a little. Maybe, you know, smush in those edges too, okay? Just a little. Okay, when I was happy with that, I brought it in and I painted that monstrosity. But now we're gonna flip the board over and we're gonna paint a new piece. Waste not, want not. I'm just gonna paint the back of it black, you know, the part I messed up on. Anyhow, we're going to need to get our little blend on, and I'm gonna do that by mixing a light blue and a dark blue together and adding just a little bit of water. This is gonna give me the ability to create some stain art at the very top, and I'm just taking a brush and saturating it with some of that color and then just pulling it straight down the board until it fades out the brush gently. And people, you can completely skip this part. We're just gonna paint some dandelions on here, but I did see a couple pieces online and I was inspired by this piece I seen on Pinterest. But of course, my original design, I wanted to do a little extra and make it a little 3D-ish, and then I was running out of time. I couldn't do everything that I wanted to. Started rushing, and then it just looked like doo-doo. So here we are. I did the same thing here and added some water to some Waverly Antique wax, and then pulled from the bottom up. Once I was happy with the way that these overlapped, I sprayed a little bit of water on a sponge and then just went back and forth over them, completely blending the two colors together. So this way the middle of the board is really blended and it's lighter compared to the top and the bottom. Then I mixed a little bit of the dark blue with the color I already created for a background. I took a napkin and just blotted some sections over top the piece, just to add something extra into the background. I love making scrapwood projects, and one of my favorite things to do with wood in general is to paint on it and create different designs on it. You are able to get a ton of different textures and looks with the way the grain sets in the wood that you cannot get when you paint on a canvas or you paint on paper. To create the stems for the dandelion, all you're going to need is an angle brush. Pick out two different colors of green, mix it with a little bit of black or dark brown. It's going to give you a bunch of different variations, and find the top of the area that you want to start at and then just drag it down. I then took a little bit of black paint and I just tapped on the top of where the dandelions were, creating our circle, and then pulled a couple strings down. I was not perfect with this because I knew I was going to be putting that white and the gray over this, and we were not really going to see these, but in the background. For the top white part of the dandelions, I'm using some Waverly white chalk paint, and I'm using a round brush, and then I'm just tapping and moving the brush down in different sections. You could also use a cotton swab, little Q-tip if you wanted to do that. It would just make things as easy as possible for you to create the top of the dandelion. But people, let's be real, these are not called dandelions, they're called wishes, okay? Everybody I know calls them wishes, especially my kids or any child I see. When they see them in the ground, it's not a weed, it's, oh, I gotta get the wish. And then you get it all in your face and you're like, oh my gosh. And anyhow, moving on. At this point, I really wanted to go ham with the extra little, dandelion pieces, but I learned my lesson from the first one and decided to just kind of blend some colors in the background and then take some of that black and kind of blend it around the edges, making it a little bit more rustic. But people mostly, I hope this piece just inspires you to go out into the world, look around at beautiful things, whether it's home decor in a store or it's something online that just inspires you, that you think you might be able to create, and give it a try. And even if you muck up the first time, do it again. It doesn't have to be perfect to be something you love. And I'm gonna turn it kind of into a stain by taking about 1/4 cup water and a nice chunk of this paint right here and just mixing it until I know that the color in the water is blended really nicely. I feel like I wasn't sure exactly where I wanted to go with the designs of these, and in case I decided to decoupage later, this just made sense to have everything white. You of course stain these and paint these whatever colors you want, but I also love how you can see the wood grain shining through these. It's absolutely beautiful when you kind of create like a stain with your paints. Now we're going to need to bring in the stapler. I know it's been a minute since the stapler's made an appearance. Welcome it people. We are going to experience the stapler most of this video. And let's not forget, we need some wood glue because we got to make sure that these are going to hold. Okay, we got to make sure they're going to hold. And wood glue is going to do that for us and give us a nice long hold. I really did not want the staples showing through on the front, so I thought, let's turn these backwards and try to pop these in so this way the staples are on the back. And of course, I fell a little bit short here. Ah! It figures. It figures. It figures. Look at me testing to make sure that, you know, little staple caught right there. It looks good, right? Yeah, it looks real good. Just as I figured, they aren't connecting. They're not long enough. They didn't go through. So that means I'm going to have to put them on the front. I didn't want to do that. It ended up working out, but keep in mind that the staples, at least the size that I have, they're only big enough to go through the small paint sticks. They're not big enough to go through the larger ones. So I took my time measuring things out. I had these 2 little wooden pencil boxes and this little photo frame here that I wanted to attach onto our wall piece. The idea behind this wall decor piece is to give us a section for us to hang something decorative and to be able to change out floral pieces. So the top, I wanted to be able to change out the frame if I wanted to, as long as it had like a hanger, we could do that. And with the little planter boxes, we could just change out the florals. This way, for every season, every holiday, whatever you wanted to do, you did not have to keep this the same. You could actually utilize these large paint sticks. I just used a tiny screw, but feel free to use whatever you want to, you know, create your little hanger there. Here's my pencil boxes that I didn't share with you. I was like, I forgot to share the whole process of adding these little pencil boxes, or they're going to be planners for us today. Okay. Put whatever you want. If you can find the box, I really wanted to get some boxes from Dollar Tree, but my recent trip was not fruitful with them. So I had these in my stash and I figured these will work just fine. I'm also taking some wood glue and then I'm going to flip them on over and staple them through the back. For the hanger, I'm going to use these little chains from the fairy garden section in Dollar Tree. That's what a lot of people call it on my browsing channel. I get such a kick out of it. I love that little fairy garden section. These are going to just kind of go right on the sides. I'm taking a little nail and I'm just going to hammer that in here so we can loop these suckers on the nail and then it'll dangle. And no, of course it's not like, you know, glued down or anything. So these will come off. So be mindful if you create this. You want to make sure that it's either stable or, you know, whatever. But I wasn't too worried about the chain coming off on the sides. I always mean to do little sticker pieces with Dollar Tree's wall creations. I know many of you do not have a Cricut and I get asked about different ideas. I seen this one and just thought it was beautiful and thought we could break this up into several little sections if we needed to and get several DIY projects out of it. So for this little frame that I'm creating, I'm just cutting out the Be Humble piece. And I'm taking a piece of decorative paper from Hobby Lobby and plopping it right onto that and putting it in our frame. I love how this paint stick DIY turned out, and I love that it is interchangeable. You do not have to keep everything as it is. You can change it out as you want to, and it only cost me a couple dollars to make. I love little hanging doors, and recently I was at Dollar Tree and seen even in their plus section they have adorable doors for $5. However, it's not a barn door, which I really like the look of barn doors, and I thought I think I can make one for just about $5. And to accomplish that, we're going to need 6 of the large paint sticks and 2 of the smaller paint sticks. We're going to use these to kind of set the tone for the top and the bottom of the door. Of course, they are a little bit wider, so we're gonna need to bring in the miter shears. Oh yeah, everybody is appearing in this video today, people. Check out the miter shears. It's been a minute. And honestly, use whatever you want to trim down the paint sticks. I just felt like we're just cutting a little nub off, and these should be able to do it without causing me too many hand grip issues here. And they did. They popped right off just easy enough. But if I had to, you know, chop the whole head off, it's just easier for me to use the miter saw or a miter box. I grabbed a bunch of these handles from Lowe's probably last year. They were like 99 cents. I like to pop in Lowe's and Home Depot as often as possible because you never know when you're going to find little gems like this for a little bit of nothing. And they had the matching little knobs and everything, and I got all the bits for 99 cents each. So we're going to use this as our little handle, and our paint stick is too thin for us to actually put in the screws. They would like have stuck out in the back. So I'm taking this little Cricut tool, you could use whatever you want, and just kind of marking where the holes are here so I can plop some glue in this space and not have it like oozing out all over the handle. You know what I'm saying? This is just gonna mark exactly where I want this to go. When I was happy with all that, I took some wood glue and I plopped it on our little top and bottom pieces here. And I grabbed some hot glue to get that immediate hold. And then we have that long lasting hold with the wood glue. So this way our door will stay together and in place. Cause at this current moment, I still didn't have anything on the back to hold the larger paint sticks in place. I'm going to use E6000 for the handles. I was out of my favorite Gorilla Glue gel. This stuff just, I don't like the smell to it. That's the only reason. It works really well, okay, but I'm just not a fan of the smell. I don't have that with the Gorilla Glue gel, so that's why I like to use that a little bit more often. And here's our door, people. Stick a fork in it. It is done. How easy was that? Of course you're not. What if we had a stencil on it? And just mind the fact that it has some paint on it, okay? Some crusty paint. It needs to be clean, okay? Stop judging me. I decided just to stick with a black chalk paint for this, and I used a synthetic brush to just do little swirly motions for our stencil. If you're not very good at stenciling, I do have a how-to stencil video, and I can link that down in the description box for you to just give you little bit of help with your stencil game. There's a lot of little tips and tricks in there, but the main key to remember whenever you're stenciling and whatever you're choosing to stencil is to make sure you offload your brush so you don't have a lot of paint on it. For our hanger, we're using these awesome sawtooth hammer and hangers. You just take a little hammer, tappity tap 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 on the back, and you are all done. I did, you know, drape some floral pieces on the side here. Love how this turned out. Let me know in the comments below if you've ever created a door with some paint sticks before. People, this might be the easiest paint stick DIY I've ever made, and I really think it's extremely high-end looking. You'll have to let me know what you think about it. Grab yourself 4 of the 21-inch paint sticks and flip them on the back side. Obviously, paint it whatever color you want. I'm going with white here, and bring in the miter shears. We're gonna need to cut at least 1 of the small paint sticks, so this way we can pop it on the back as a brace to keep our large paint paint sticks together. And if you want to use a miter box or a miter saw, you go right ahead. I am confident that the miter shears can chomp down and handle the job with these little paint sticks. Then I'm just taking some wood glue and smooshing it on the back of these before I take the stapler and plop a bunch of staples in these suckers. And in case you didn't know, I just want to let you know that the staples won't really go through the larger paint sticks, but they go through the small ones just fine, at least for the size staples. You could always get larger staples, but these are the ones I have on hand. I'm taking a little bit of twine and just wrapping it around the top here. You can take some ribbon or whatever, some beads, and put around the top. I'm just using some twine, wrapping it around like 5 or 6 times, and make sure that if you're going to do something like this, use some tacky glue, something that's going to give you a long lasting hold, especially if you plan on selling a piece like this. It's been my experience that if you're just using like a fabric with some wood and you're only putting the hot glue on there, that it will wear down or come off in time, especially if it gets hot. When you're happy with how many ever times you wrap that around there, grab you a hook, okay? And keep in mind that you're going to want to glue this down with some E6000 Gorilla Glue Gel, because unless you have really tiny screws on hand, you will see them pop out the back of your project. So just use the glue. It does a really good job. I'm just going to take some of these Dollar Tree wall cling, wall creation pieces and this little stay positive saying and put on the bottom here. If you want it to stay permanently, seal over it with some Mod Podge. However, if you want to be able to change it up, because these do peel off easily, don't seal it up. You can change the saying to your will of your decor. Last, I'm taking one of these Dollar Tree bamboo rings and creating a little wreath to hang off of our hanger. You could, of course, put whatever type of little wreath you want or hanging decor piece. Switch this out however you want. I love how high-end looking this piece came out. And again, it just cost me a few dollars. This wall decor sconce, you're going to need 9 Dollar Tree pallets, and a staple and some wood glue are going to be the tools of the trade for this project. We're going to start out attaching just 3 at a time because this piece is going to be fairly big, so you want to do it in stages. And I'm making sure to put the wood glue all along the edges or in the seams, just like I'm doing here. Are you watching in the video? Okay. Now, once I get them to this point, we're then going to take our staple and we're going to staple them where they meet together. And we're going to do this for the whole thing, and it's a little time consuming, I'm not going to lie. And if you're wondering what the piece of wood is for, my table is one of them cheap, fabric table joints from somewhere that you use for parties, and that's what I roll with. I stage it, make it look fabulous for all of you to watch me DIY on, and it's not very stable. So that piece of wood helps me make sure that the staples are getting really into the wood. Next, after we have our 3 rows, we are going to make sure they're all even, and we are going to take a popsicle stick and cut 4 nice little clean sections and then staple them where all of these meet. So this way we have one big board or backing, one big backing. Grab your wood glue, smoosh it on all in the parts. So this way there is a bond between the wood pieces and the staples. So once this dries overnight and you come back the next day, it's ready to go. And don't be afraid to put extra pieces around the sides either, because the more staples you have in here, the sturdier this will be and the longer it will last. Now that we have that all completely together, we're going to let that dry and take this beautiful wood mirror piece from an old piece of furniture that I picked up, and we're going to paint it up. And unfortunately, before I painted up, I didn't rub 2 brain cells together and realized this is going to have some tannus going on, or some bleed through. And protect the piece before I even got started after I cleaned it. So since I didn't do that and use like a 1-2-3 primer spray paint, it was raining that day, so I decided to bust out my Dixie Belle's Boss. This stuff is great to use because it dries clear and you can do little spots. So if you do a piece of furniture and you notice later there's a spot or two, you can just, you know, rub a little on there or paint a little on there and let it dry, and then just paint your color right over it without having to spray or do or make a whole mess with a whole bunch of product. So I really like this for that. But oh my goodness, people, the yellowing was out of control. Look at how horrible this got. While that's drying, we're going to move on to painting our project, and we're going to use these two pretty colors. If you do not have Dixie Belle products, you can use apple barrel paints as well. Mix them with a little bit of chalk paint if you want that thicker consistency, because sometimes the acrylic paints do take more coats than just a chalk paint, so using a white would work fine to mix those two colors. I have painted hundreds of palettes, and the best way to accomplish this is a spray paint. But if you're going for a weathered look for me, I like to use watered down chalk paints, or mix the chalk paints with some acrylic paints to get desired colors. Purposefully place the paint in the sections you want, and then we're going to wet down our heavy thick white chalk paint and go over in long strokes throughout the whole piece so we don't have any harsh stops. Mostly I skip painting because it's self-explanatory. I do like to show when I'm doing specific techniques. This, however, I wanted to just show you the color variation in the yellow and the white. Bananas, right? Just so crazy that it's so different with the tannins in it. I'm kind of a napkin connoisseur and I love this particular napkin. And since we're going vintage everyday decor in this video, I'm going to rip the napkin in spaces or places that I want to just keep certain little designs of it, and then we're going to pull it apart. A good idea would be to put a little bit of Mod Podge on your fingers to peel that sneaky layer off underneath the top of your napkin, and then we're going to just take a sponge to press down our napkin wherever we want, or in our little mirror frame. Now, if you don't have a mirror frame, you can pick up a regular frame or just skip it all together when you see the end project. You don't have to do this part if you don't want to. I just thought it was an extra nice little touch. Now we're going to take some of this beautiful trim I picked up from Home Depot, and it comes in small sections, but I get the longer ones because I'm constantly building things, and cut it down to size. I'm using my miter shears for this. Now, I do not use miter shears often because sometimes they just don't work out the way you want them to, but for trim and dowels, they work magically. I did happen to cut these frame pieces a little short on their 45-degree angle, so I had to make them even, and with doing that, I had to come in with my frame a little bit around the edges like you see here. It wasn't a huge deal. In the end project, you just don't even care because it's so stunning, but I took wood glue and hot glue, made sure to not overlap the two so it didn't cancel out the bonds. I always like to use wood glue for the immediate hold, and then wood glue or E6000, or a favorite of mine is Gorilla Glue Gel for that long lasting hold, especially when you're selling or giving people things. You just have that fuzzy inside. Know that those glues are going to hold your project together and last. Now that our little decoupage sections are all dry, we're going to just stipple on some colors here just to kind of age it a little bit. And when I do this, I like to go dark first, medium, and then come back with a color that is actually going to blend whatever you're decoupaging in with the furniture or your thrift or your decor piece, so it looks like one cohesive unit. And for this project in particular, we're going to use this color to go back over, and as you can see, it actually is the color of the little vintage design in the napkin. This is a little knob I picked up from Hobby Lobby. For whatever reason, them little stem metal pieces on there, they're always so long, and you never need them that long, and I did not feel like busting out anything to cut it down. So I'm just taking this little metal wire, and we are going to MacGyver together a little piece inside of it with some Gorilla Glue Gel to put through our little holes in our pallets so we can create this as our hanging mechanism for our beautiful sconce. And let me know what you think about this one. plant holder, we're going to need 4 of the small pallets from Dollar Tree and some paint sticks. You can pick this pack up at Home Depot. These are $1.48 and you're getting 30 of them. So that's a pretty good deal to me. I just painted this all white and I did it off camera to save y'all time. You see me paint the first project white. You guys know how to paint things. I'm sorry. I love y'all. I'm just messing with y'all. Paint it white, paint it whatever color you want, okay? To attach each one of these pieces, we're going to use wood glue and hot glue. And as you can see here, I was like, oh, this is not going to satisfy me as I'm trying to make this. So I brought in the stapler to save the day. So I put a staple or two, you know what I mean, at the bottom to ensure that this sucker was not going anywhere. We are going to add popsicle sticks at the bottom of it too for our little base, but you know, just I feel fuzzy inside doing it like this. I have actually recreated this today for you. I have made this exact DIY almost exactly before as a fall decor piece. Today, I wanted to give you the idea to be able to use this in many different ways because this is such, I think people sleep on the pallets and I need to stop that. Okay. Stop sleeping on Dollar Tree pallets. So I need to give you ideas and inspiration. And that's what I'm trying to do here with this little piece. I am going over and touching up the white. I just wanted you to see that because again, this is why I like to use my 2 favorite methods to do the pallets because you will have to go touch these up. I cut the popsicle sticks to size to put on the bottom. So this, you could use a solid piece of wood here if you wanted to. I'm just using the popsicle sticks. And we're going to use more hot glue and wood glue to attach these pieces. And then we're going to staple them on down because these suckers were wobbly. I was like, these popsicle sticks are not made of the best quality. I have a problem with how wiggly they are. So staples it is. And next, I'm attaching our little snowmen. These are from Dollar Tree as our feet. We're going to put some wood glue on here and then we're going to attach it. This is the moment that I realized I cut the popsicle sticks wrong. So I just kind of, you know, I came back in with the shears and trimmed it up. You know, sometimes your measurements are off. It happens, okay? Off camera, I then attached these with some wood glue and I let this dry for about 30 minutes. You let it dry for an hour or more. I had to hurry this up because I'm filming for you. You know what I mean? I'm trying to get this done. And then I took some white paint and went over everything so it all matched. And here is the first idea. Nice, simple, and really goes with anything. You could put a little glass vase in here, or you could just put florals in here with some fairy lights like I did. And if you want to kick it up a notch, take some of Dollar Tree's metal lace and wrap it around here and attach it. This will give it another look, or you can take some ribbon. Your color choice is completely up to you. And make sure your florals match with it. It just gives it a whole nother look. I love all these ideas, but people, I couldn't stop here. Oh no, we're gonna bust out the clay and my favorite mold. This is my favorite clay, and the reason is it's super easy to work with. I struggle with grip issues and I don't have to do a lot of pushing and prying. I do have clay tools that I use as well to help me get in the little cracks. And you can just kind of press them down to make sure that your clay is nice and flat. And people, I am so sorry. I do forget to mention all the time that I have an Amazon store. The link is down in the description box. I also have a website. The link is down in the description box. A lot of the things you see me use or even create are on my website. You can pick them up from there or in the Amazon store. I'm always asked these questions and I forget to plug that stuff very often because I'm just so busy trying to bring y'all content you enjoy. Please forgive me. I do not mean to forget any of that. And here, all I'm doing is taking some tacky glue and attaching this burlap strip that I frayed and putting on our little clay mold right to the front with some wood glue. I let this dry overnight and then came back in and painted it white. And then took some of Dixie Belle's gilding wax. If you do not have this, some silver glittery paint would work fine as well. Just make sure you have dried it off on your finger and apply it. It really makes everything just kind of pop. Cut cut down these 1x3s. And I did take a second to show you the measurements real quick in case you want to recreate this for yourself. You could use a miter box to do this. No heavy tools are required. You will need 3 pallets as well, and then attach the pallets with wood glue and hot glue to accomplish those bonds for your little piece of wood that you're going to put on the sides here. Now, if you don't want to use this and you just want to hot glue it, more power to you, but I will take no responsibility if it falls apart on you, okay? Because you were warned. See how the bottom of the wood block comes down to the bottom? There's a little bit of space at the top. If you want to cut your block the opposite way, like make it a little bit longer and then just kind of flip it, that would work too. I like the look of the wood this way, so that's why I did it this way. And that tiny little gap at the top there, like, no one's gonna care. This thing is so cute, and you could just really put it anywhere. Just absolutely loved how this turned out. I did make sure to put all the glue on first before attaching the last piece on both sides, and you're going to want to hold it for a second to let that hot glue set in, because once you go to attach this to the bottom piece, which is that palette we have over here, you're going to use mostly wood glue, so that way you know that if you drop this thing or whatever, it's going to hold. So making sure the top piece is well held together before you put this on here, because you're only putting little bits of wood or hot glue in the corners just to, you know, grab it initially. And here's me showing you like how I missed with the wood glue. Wasn't a big deal. I just took a paintbrush and kind of smooshed the wood glue in up against the pallets, and then I let this dry overnight. For this part, you're going to need some joint compound and whatever color paint you want. I'm using black, and we're going to just mix the two together, and that's it. We're just going to create a colored raised stencil on this natural wood. And I wanted to do this because, believe it or not, when I have done raised stencils in the past and then I paint over them, I have people, even my best friend is one of them, who are like, I really like the stencil before you painted over it. So for all of yous who have commented, and Randy, if you're watching, this DIY is for you. And the best part about this is you can create the raised stencil in any color you want. I just used black. I wanted to keep this really neutral. I was gonna go gray, but I'm like, nah, let's live a little. And it's so amazing. This might actually be one of my favorite raised stencil looks. Let me know what you think. When I seen this little hanging decor piece at Dollar Tree, I thought to myself, this would look much better as a tray or a riser. Am I wrong? No? Yeah? Let me know. Let me know in the comments what you think. Anyhow, can I bring to your attention, in case I haven't already, the Dollar Tree's been putting staples in things, and they are not easy to get out. Oh my god, I can't get it out. I had to go find the stapler later, removaler, because I just wasn't equipped enough with a pair of needle nose pliers. Risers need legs, correct? Yes. You can use whatever kind of legs you want. I'm going to use some tumbling blocks, and I'm going to paint them suckers black. And of course, we're going to use my Gorilla Glue and hot glue to attach these right in the corners. But before we do, I wanted to just share what I know some of you feel is a satisfying moment by unplugging my wood glue. If you enjoy oddly satisfying things, put it in the comments. I need to know who's here with me. Okay, now, again, we put a little bit on each part of our tumbling block and then attach the pieces right into the corner, and that's it for this one. We are going to turn this beautiful piece of live edge wood into a napkin and utensil holder. Now, I'm not going to stress exact measurements, mostly because you can custom create this to whatever size makes sense. However, the build I am going to go into detail with because I feel like this is a very simple and basic design that you can use no matter what size. So first you're going to need your base, right? The piece that everything sits on, and that's what I'm cutting here, this nice long piece. And I'm going to be using 2 pieces of glass from Dollar Tree to sit on each end. Next, we're going to have to cut the little pieces that go in the center to hold our napkins. And to make sure I get accurate sizing, I'm just taking the piece I already cut and laying that on top of our live edge wood, cutting that down and taking all the rough edges off of 2 small sections. This way we can put them right in the center of our little napkin and utensil holder. Now it's time to attach everything, and you can do this a couple different ways. One of the easiest and most secure would be to just take some wood glue and some clamps and then let this dry 24 hours. But first, you want to make sure you measure and make sure it's all in the right spot. So I'm just putting my little utensil holder pieces here, making sure that I have my little wood pieces in the right spot. And now we're going to bring in the drill gun. Another great way to attach wood together is to take a drill bit that is slightly bigger than the dowel that you're going to be using and drill holes in each piece to cut little bits. And you can actually buy little dowels like already, cut into size and shove them in your little holes. So this way you have a bond in between the 2 pieces of wood, ensuring that your piece is going to be that much more stable and last and hold up really well. Now here's the part where you're probably looking for some words of wisdom on the best way to tackle this. People, let's be real, I don't have that for you, but what I do have is a very particular set of skills that I have acquired over a long period of time of watching my dad wing the shit at things, okay? So that's what I'm gonna do. I'm going to eyeball where I think the center is on our wood pieces, and then I am gonna place our utensil holders back on our base and eyeball where I think our wood pieces should go, mark it, and then drill it. Bam, that is it. That is the mastery behind the wisdom that I shall now pass on to you. You're welcome. Once you're happy with that, if you don't have the small dowels, take the larger one and just chop it on down to size. And yes, I forgot to introduce the miter shears. So everybody on Team Miter Shears, please don't get me, okay? I forgot. I'm so sorry. Oh my gosh. And people, keep in mind, this is not a perfect science. So as you can see here, there's a gap. I obviously cut this too big. So take your time measuring and cutting it down as small as you need to. Once you have it just the right size, you can then apply your wood glue. And I recommend smooshing some in that hole and around the actual base of the piece that you're attaching on to the other piece of wood. So this way you just have a healthy amount all smushed in here, and then clamp this down to sit for 24 hours. Now, we gotta decorate up the little glass pieces, right? Okay, we gotta make them fancy schmancy. I'm just kidding. You could leave them plain, honestly. I wanted to just do something on here and then mark them fork and spoon. So this way, the people of the world that couldn't rub 2 brain cells together at my house and realize that they are forks and spoons in there, they could read the sign and then they'd know. But all jokes aside, people, I'm really not keeping this piece. I wanted to just give you guys a different idea for these glass pieces. I see them used a lot as little tea light holders or for candles, and wanted to show you that they actually will hold forks and spoons. They are tall enough, because reality, this little wood piece, like I said in the beginning, it's actually going in my vendor space. And I also thought the display part, staging for the video, it looks super cute like this. I love how this turned out. What do you guys think? Oh, how I love to DIY me some tags. And this little joint, when I seen it at Dollar Tree, reminded me of a pallet, but it's a fence. But I love pallets, so I picked that up and I'm like, let's make us a nice little wall planter with a stencil. Okay, we got to remove the home sign because it's in our way. Believe it or not, this came off really easy, and then I really thought it was funny because underneath the laser pop out pieces they put on here, there's actually the word on here in silver. I see you, Dollar Tree. I see you. Now we're going to just remove our little, the twine that is on the back of here. And at this point, I've had enough staples, so I'm just skipping all of that and just being lazy, cutting all of the ends and leaving that little tiny bit stuck in there with the twine. Like, just muck it. We're moving on. Here's the beautiful stencil we're going to be using today. It's an owl. I picked this up off Amazon. I'm not sure if it's down in my link or not for my affiliate store. And obviously, put your stencil wherever you want. I'm going to caddy corner mine. I guess that's how you would describe it, because we're going to put planter piece down in the opposite section. I didn't want whatever flower or greenery I put in here to cover up the stencil. So pretty. We need to give this a nice base, so I'm just using some white chalk paint here, and I did 3 layers. It took 3 to get some nice coverage. You can obviously use the back. I know a lot of people do that. I've done that before just to save me this step, but I felt like I wanted to keep the back, and we're just going to paint the front. I'm going to use a paint stick to create that pocket look in our little planter piece here. We got to be able to have some room to shove some stuff down in there. So I'm just measuring this to size, and then we're going to need to bring in our miter shears. People, I do want to emphasize this is not the easiest way to cut a paint stick. If you have hand grip strength issues, I recommend using a miter box with the saw. Okay, I was being super lazy and decided to just gently press down on the sections, and then I flipped the paint stick back and forth, pressing down in the same section, so I was able to easily break it. And I wanted to keep the piece neutral. I almost didn't paint these at all, but decided against that and took a little bit of Waverly's Antique Wax and went over all the little pieces. For the stencil part, I wanted to keep it really colorful, so I grabbed a bunch of different colors along with some brown and some black, because I want the little piece that we just stained to blend into the stencil. I highly recommend, whenever you're going to do a large piece like this, especially if you're going to be working on top of the stencil for any length of time, tape that sucker down. Grab you some painter's tape and put a couple pieces on there just to hold your stencil in place. I'm going to be using a round brush mostly, but I will be alternating with a stippling brush for different effects. A soft round brush is going to give you a very faded light appearance with your paints, and a stippling brush will help give you heavier highlights. And it is important that whenever you're stenciling to remember the main trick to getting a good stencil without having a lot of bleed through is really your onloading and offloading of the brush. You want to make sure that it is almost a dry brush and it doesn't have a lot of paint on it. This is also going to help for the transition from color to color if you're using different colors. If you're just using one color, I wouldn't stress it too much. And in case anyone is interested, it took me about an hour to paint this entire stencil. I let that dry and then took a dotting tool and used a couple different colors to go around where I painted in areas and add some highlights, and then put a couple little dots going down in different sizes. I added a little bit of depth to the nose. And obviously, people, if you don't want to add any of this, don't. If you want to just paint your stencil all one color, just paint it all one color. This is just something I really like to do with stenciling, because you can take something, if you have a hard time drawing, and create an entire piece gently going over the stencil with light paint colors, and it looks like you hand drew it or you hand colored it, depending on the care and time that you take applying all of your colors, along with any additional little enhancements with a dotting tool. This turned out super pretty. I do wish I put a couple more highlights in certain areas, but for the most part, I love this. I let the stencil dry, and then I put our pieces on where I wanted them to go and just kind of mark the spaces. So this way I could come back in with the hot glue and then easily just kind of trace over the sections with the hot glue that I put our little marks, and then attach our pieces. And people, I do want to stress, okay, this is hot glue. This is not E6000 and Gorilla Glue gel. If you want this to last for a good long time, make sure you're incorporating some of that, or even some wood glue, so that way if you want to hang this on the door and the sun hits it, that hot glue is not going to just melt off and your DIY piece isn't going to just fall apart. I felt like the section we were going to put a hanger needed a little something, so I picked up some rings from Dollar Tree, little wooden rings, I guess that's what you want to call them. I decided to kind of stain one up with some antique Waverly wax and attach that right over the hole before I placed our hanger. One of the easiest things to make out of scrap wood is a little riser, but I can guarantee you've never seen a stain job like this on a riser before. We're going to also need to create some legs, and I'm going to use this little yardstick I picked up from Dollar General and just nip it in the size that is going to be basically the width of our piece. I sanded this down just slightly for this particular project. Now, if you want to get this really nice and smooth, you go right ahead, but I wanted those little divots, I guess you would call them, in our wood piece, because we're going to take some mica powder and create a paint. This is going to give us some beautiful highlights in our stain on this wood piece. Now, normally I will tappity tap 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 this stuff out and it makes a mess. And recently I had someone say, Brandy, why don't you just take something to spoon a little bit out, tap it on the table, and then mix it up. And I don't know why I never rubbed two brain cells together and did this. If you've never tried this technique before, I have people all the time ask, what can you do with mica powder? I mix some Mod Podge up with just a little bit, and it gives a nice paint. You can even apply this on glass. I've done this before in videos. It just works out really well and it holds up pretty good. We're taking this beautiful red color and we're just placing it where all the little divots and messed up spots are on our riser. This took about 30 minutes to dry, not long at all, and I did a second coat. And if you're wondering, Brandy, why are you doing cherry? I feel like I do a lot of teals and blues whenever I do my stain art, and I just wanted to do something a little bit different. So roll on with me here, okay? Now, I wanted to blend this into the wood with the stain that we're going to be putting on here and creating. So I took some of the copperish or bronzish, whatever you want to call it, color mica powder and mixed up just a little bit. And as you can see, it's almost the color of the wood. And I did this all around the edges of where we put that red. And I also did a nice big section back here in the back. So as we go along with our blending, everything is going to look cohesive with the little piece, and you're not going to be able to tell where the grain stops with the real wood and the stain and the mica powder mixes. There are many ways to do this, but one of my favorite ways is to take a little bit of antique Waverly wax because it has a nice brown tone to it, especially when you mix it with water. It also has a nice fade look, and whatever color paint you want to blend in with your stain art. I'm choosing to use this Tuscan red, and I just continued mixing it up until I thought it had a good consistency. And you want to make sure you add that water, otherwise you're just kind of painting the wood and you're not creating a stain with the wood where you're going to be able to see the wood pop through as the matte acrylic paint and the water dry. And you want to make sure you're using acrylic paint and not chalk paint for this. Chalk paint is thicker and it's going to give you more of a solid coverage, and acrylic paint is thinner and it really just kind of tints your wood as you go. I hope that makes sense, people. If not, pop a question in the comments. I'll do my best to try and answer anything. I took a really thin paintbrush and made sure to trace along the wood grains. I started out dark and then just took some water and blended the color back into the row behind it. And I did this throughout the entire piece. Went and followed the wood grain with the darker hue and then blended it in. And you can do this with many different colors. It looks wild right now. It's really dark and you're like, Brandy, this, I know it's scary. It's scary. Trust the process, okay? At least with this. You can always go back. That's one thing I love about doing this, is you can go back and make adjustments with water and fade it out, so this way it all just blends really, really well together. This took me 3 hours. I will let you know. This was not, whenever I do pieces like this, I know I have to sit down and calculate for the time it's going to take with the blending with stain art, especially when I'm creating a video for you guys. But I love doing it so much. And I think it's such an awesome way to give something you're creating a unique way to kind of pop out in your home. And it could be something just as small as a riser or a large wall piece. For our little legs, I just took more of that, you know, copperish, bronzish color and put it on all the sides except for the one that I was going to put our wood glue and our hot glue to attach our little pieces. And I let this dry overnight before putting a nice glossy finish. If you're going to have this in an area where it's going to get wet, make sure that you put the right sealer on here and make sure you go the whole length of the board. It just looks a little bit more cohesive once that sealer dries. People, if I'm being honest, this piece looked like a giant ashtray to me with the little divots around the edges. Now, I know that an ashtray wouldn't have holes in the center, but still, you gotta admit, kind of resembles it a little bit. We're gonna use this chalk paint and this granite gray acrylic paint to give us just a little bit of a grayish tone. We're going to bring in a crusty bit paintbrush to give us a little bit, like I said, we're going to kind of do a white wash. We're going to put a little bit of that chalk paint on here and we're going to just go over our piece. Long strides, and then we're going to bring in our spray bottle and spritz little sections. You want to do this while your paint is wet, and then you can take the paint, the dry paint that's already on the brush, and kind of just smoosh it around. And then you can take a paper towel or a microfiber cloth and wipe it on back, and it's just going to give a really beautiful blended look. I decided to seal this piece up before I added our floral piece in and our little hanger, just to make sure that any of the little bits from the florals that dropped down didn't get stuck in our paint before we sealed it. For the hanger piece, we're going to use some Dollar Tree nautical rope and some tacky glue and a little bit of hot glue for a quick hold. To attach this, I'm dabbing a little bit of tacky glue, leaving a space for the hot glue, dabbing a little bit of tacky glue, leaving a space for the hot glue. And I did that and measured that off camera so I didn't bore you guys to death. I didn't want you snoring on me. And then I'm just attaching it until I'm happy with the length. I leave enough of the nautical rope to give us a little bit of a handle piece. And then I mark on the other side where I want to start gluing and then attach the rest of the piece. Look at that. It doesn't look like an ashtray anymore. I really like how this looks just like that, you know, but we're going to add some florals. Hi, my name is Brandy. I am florally challenged, but that's not going to stop me. I picked this stuff up at Dollar Tree recently, and I knew I was going to use this garland for this, and the rest of the stuff I wasn't sure of, but I figured I would figure it out as we rolled along. I did take some tacky glue and a couple of staples to really attach this and hold it into place. See this porch? It's sad. It's missing something. It's missing a little side table. And I'm going to use this Lipton container here to create us one. However, brought it in the house and I'm looking at it, I'm like, something ain't right. This is just going to be the smallest table ever. And I thought, let's grab another container. Lucky for me, we have this laying around because we like lemonade and we like tea. We're from Baltimore, you know, half and half. It just goes together. Okay, you can't get rid of them roots. I was a little sad that the wrapping around the lemonade container would not come off. Now, I needed to get a top, so I ventured to Dollar Tree. I knew in their plus section that they had these amazing wood rounds for just $3. And we're gonna need some rocks, so I stopped over their little jar filler section, that's what I like to call this, and grabbed some that I thought would match the rocks I had at the house and the color of the siding. I picked up 2 pieces for this project, one for the top, one for the bottom. This way, once I put the rocks in the container, it's going to be pretty level and I'm not going to have to worry about this going anywhere. I removed the tags and I removed the hooks. Of course, I'm saving the hooks for later because you never know what you might need those suckers for. Now, you can do whatever you want to the top and bottom of your pieces, but I am going to create some stain art using some grays, some teals, and some of Waverly's antique wax. First, we gotta create the custom stains, and I'm gonna mix our grays together with just a little bit of water until I'm happy with that. And if you're wondering what water ratio, I usually use about 1/4 cup whenever I'm doing something small. That's usually enough water to create the blend, and it lasts pretty long on fairly big projects. You can use a sponge. I do like using sponges, but since I had so many colors, I decided to do this in 2 different layers with the paintbrushes first to get that dark layer in the background. And then as I was going along, I had a sponge that I was coming in on the sides to blend in the antique wax and our stain paint that we created together, so this way you didn't just have straight lines. I had to wait for this to completely dry with the first layer, and here you can see how dominant the lines are. There's not a lot of blending going on, and there's nothing wrong with this look. I create this look as well. I just wanted something blended for this particular piece. In total, this project took me 3 days, and the blending and the stain with the top and the bottom took me several hours, but I did accomplish those pieces in 1 day. As this was drying, I noticed the gray was still really light, so I put a little bit on the side of the bowl so I could kind of just touch that and add a little bit of water and then create a little bit of a deeper colored dimension where the gray is in the top of the table. I didn't worry about it so much in the bottom because for the most part the bottom is going to be covered up and I wasn't trying to add any more work onto me. To attach our canister to the bottom piece, I wanted to put some screws in here, so we're going to need to bring in the drill and attach a little drill bit that is slightly smaller than the screws that we're going to use, and I'm just popping 2 in here. You can pop as many as you want, but I plan on, and be careful, okay, be careful. Make sure you got your PPE on because this is like metal. It's, you know, it's metal. And then I placed the canister on, you know, the center-ish of our bottom piece and drilled holes through the bottom as well. So this way I could easily put the screws up through the bottom and attach to the canister. On the canisters themselves, I wanted to create a stone effect. So I'm going to use some joint compound to help me accomplish that, along with those Dollar Tree rocks we picked up. Make sure you're in a well-ventilated area and you're wearing your PPE whenever you're exposing yourself to this stuff for a long period of time. I just went out on my front porch. There isn't a ton of footage of this because I had struggles trying to film it for y'all. But as you can see here, I just smeared the joint compound everywhere and then I smooshed the rocks where I wanted them to go. I did leave a little gap where I plan on attaching the 2 of these canisters, and when I was happy with that, I let these dry for a full 24 hours. I feel like these turned out so beautifully, and for the most part they were stuck in there really well. I had a couple little stragglers that kind of popped out, but I feel like that was just me not putting enough joint compound in certain sections. So I'm going to use these screws to attach up through our piece, and in my mind I was like, we're gonna put this down because we need something for it to grab onto inside of our little can here. And yes, I put some hot glue and some wood glue onto this little shim inside of there. I really feel like if you're going to do something like this, you need to have something else for the screws to grab onto on the other side. Unfortunately, the hole was so narrow for me to hold my hand in, and I didn't want to accidentally drill my fingers, so I just prayed that they caught onto the little shim, and unfortunately they didn't. The shim popped right out. It popped out. Great. I added more glue to the nails inside of the can and then took to my rock garden to find some rocks to put inside of the canister. And of course, in my mind, I'm like, we're going to grab the biggest rock we can find. Of course, it doesn't fit. After I rub 2 brain cells together, I grab a few handfuls of larger rocks and start putting them down in here. Now, the wind in my area is horrendous and everything ends up in my neighbor's yard. So I am praying that as time goes on that this thing can withstand the weather we have here. I used some tacky glue and I used some painter's tape to attach this, and a little bit of hot glue, you know, for that immediate hold. And once I had this wrapped up nice and tight, I felt like we needed something else. So I brought in the stapler and started stapling all around the center of this. I wanted to ensure that not only the weight was going to keep this in place, but as well as the hold that I attached in the center. When I was happy with that, I smeared some more of the joint compound everywhere and then smooshed some more of the rocks right on in here. Now, it goes without saying, you cannot just put something like this outside, people, and pray it's gonna last. You gotta take a trip to the store and make sure that the sealer you're putting on here is gonna do the job. This is the stuff that I decided to go with. I have used this before, not this exact brand, but the oil base before, the interior one, and I love the end result of it. And just a little tip, whenever you're using this kind of stuff, make sure you're outside preferably instead of just a well-ventilated area. This stuff has a really strong smell, but it's super durable. Try to spray in little sections because it will clump and yellow if it, like, you know, pulls up together. But people, once this stuff dried, it's absolutely gorgeous. The table, I could not be happier with it. This wood ring centerpiece is super easy. We're going to use these wood rings from Dollar Tree and these little wood slice pieces I picked up from Hobby Lobby. Now, if you're not following my Browse with Brandy each week, you can also pick up cheap budget-friendly ones from Michael's and Walmart. Once you put your wood glue down in the very center, you're going to want to bring in the staple gun. Sometimes I get a little wild and I'll put like 3-4 staples in here, but for this particular project, I just put 2. And then I let this dry for about 30 minutes just to make sure that the ring wasn't going to pop right off there as soon as I started painting it. The staples I use are kind of shallow, so sometimes they will pop out when I do particular projects, so I'll let them dry extra. I want to give this a weathered look, so I'm taking Dixie Belle's French linen and going over it, not the entire piece, and leaving a little bit of that wood pop through, and then I'm just dry brushing with some of Dixie Belle's Cotton White. To finish it off with a little bit of that vintage touch, I'm taking this gold gilding wax and going completely around the ring on both sides and a little bit on the bottom. And that's going to be it for this one. Add your florals as you want. While $5.45 is a great deal for a 1x3, which is what I need for the first DIY, it's not my cheapest option. However, common boards are amazing because they are clean and cut, ready to use, and all around just saves you time. So if you don't have a ton of tools and a ton of time at your disposal, these are a great option for you. We, however, are going to use these furring 1x3 wood strips, which need to be sanded. They're uneven, but your girl has a ton of tools and a ton of time. Plus, they're $2.68. So I am saving $2.77 by putting a little elbow grease in it. To sand down the rough bits, I'm using an 80 grit sandpaper with my orbital sander. This is the sander that I use. If you do not have this, one of these sheet sanders will work, or don't be afraid to put in some elbow grease and get one of these plastic hand sanders. You can switch out the paper. I would not recommend using one of these block sanders because they have some give, and these furring strips need a firm press to really knock off all those hard edges. Even though I'm going for a little bit of a rustic look, I'm following up with a 220 grit to make it softer to work with. And in case no one has warned you, be careful these swirly marks. If you use an orbital sander, pressing too hard from one side to the other can create them. So gentle pressure, people, gentle pressure. We are going to cut 2 10-inch boards with our 1x3 pieces of wood, and then 2 7-inch boards with our 1x3 pieces of wood. This is the only part I'm going to show you where we are using our antique Waverly wax to stain this. Wanted to keep this really simple, budget friendly, and something most of my DIYers probably have in their house. We all love our antique Waverly wax, okay? So I thought, let's just use this on everything. Why not? Plus, I like rustic stuff, and I like how this looks. Now, remember them swirly marks? My wood has it in there, and the reason I wasn't stressing is because this is rustic, and the more beat up and worn these are, the more I love it. So, again, you're worried about it, be mindful of it. I wasn't worrying about it for these projects because this is a look I'm going for. The more it looks wore out, the happier I am. Once the project is dry, you're going to want to attach all your pieces. Now, how you accomplish that is completely up to you. I'm using a nail gun and wood glue for this. If you want to use a drill or screws, or you want to just use a hammer and some nails, have at it. Whatever makes you feel fuzzy inside. People, I will support it. We're keeping this nice and simple and literally just attaching them on the ends. We're not cutting no 45s. You could totally do that if you want to, but we are not. I want you, if you just have a miter box and basic tools, you're going to be able to make these items. Now, once your box is complete and your wood glue is dry or your nails are in there, we're going to start with the fun stuff. Look at these little branches I got from Dollar Tree. Who has seen these at Dollar Tree? Are you sleeping on Dollar Tree? They got these branches that are painted and they're all different colors, and I love them. So I bought these a while ago to put these in here. We're going to dig out a little hole. Not a huge hole, a little hole. You could use a drill bit for this, you know, a knife, honestly, an X-Acto, something. I have these little tools, so I just started scribbling, you know, clawing at the wood and getting us a space. So I'm clipping them down to size, and then I'm making sure they're kind of tight, where I gotta kind of force them in the top. Once I put the wood glue in there at the bottom to have the thick part of the stem in there, so this way I knew once it dried it wasn't going anywhere. And look at this, it's so cool. Now, not every piece, you see that little gap right there, not every piece touch the top, but make sure that they touch the top, at least some of them. And then I came back and hit the top part with a small amount of glue. See how tiny this amount of hot glue is? This is just so it holds in place while that hot glue has time to set. So I did this for each one of these, and when I was all done putting the branches in, I came back with the wood glue and then hit them where all the branches overlapped or touch one another to make sure none of these were going anywhere. Added some fairy lights for a little bit of ambiance, and that was it for this one. For our next project, we're going to get a 1x4, and these furring strips are in worse shape than the 1x3s, but I'm gonna have to suck that up because they're only $3.48. And we're gonna start this off the same way we did the 1x3 with the 80 grit, and then follow it up with a 220 grit for that soft finish. Cut 2 10-inch pieces, and then mark at 1.5 inch and cut us 8 pieces at 1.5 inches. So when you're done, you'll have 2 10-inch boards, and then you'll have 8 little bits. See, little bits, we're gonna need 8 of these. And they're gonna go on here like this. There's a good reason I didn't attach them and stain them right away, because I wanted the wood to be on wood when I was putting the wood glue on there. I just feel like the bond is way stronger than if I do it with the wax or after it's painted. So I decided to go about it, you know, layering the wood glue, hitting it with the nail gun, layering with the wood glue until I had this. Once I had this, I then went back in with the wood glue one more time and then put our nails in from the top. Again, you can use whatever you want to use, your screws, your nails, your hammer, whatever's easiest for you, that can be done with this very project as well. And of course, I run out of nails when I just need one more, but you know. Struggle my life. Once it was dry, I came back in and finished it up with the antique Waverly wax. Let that dry, and then those of you who are not new to me know I mess with stain art, and you've seen me do this before. Most of the time I'll do it before I wax, but since I'm sanding this afterwards, I'm just taking some blue custom stain and gently painting in some very thick lines in the wood grain. Now it's a little bit messy, but it's not going to matter because we're going to go over this with a sandpaper, and it's really going to cut out all of the blur and just leave some of that color in those wood grains, and it's just absolutely beautiful. To tie in some of that color to the sides, because we have those blocks holding all the sides together, I'm just doing a little bit of stencil art, and the wood pieces are uneven, so I'm not using a sponge or anything like that. You'll have a tremendous amount of bleed. This is very intricate and a little painstaking, but it is worth doing it with a paintbrush. I had everything to complete this piece, so all I had to purchase was the wood. I did add hangers and little cup holders at the bottom. What are the odds that I come out here to stage this and there are little bird turds? Like, come on, man. Taking a giant duty on my desk. Oh, I left a little stain. Now I gotta fix it. Gotta be kidding me. desk makeover. It is in extremely good shape for being as rickety as it is. It is literally filthy. However, there was, I don't know, someone definitely got their money's worth out of this when it was new. There were stains, there was bleh in there, feces. I don't even know what kind of, I was not happy about having to clean this out. Now, I did spare you all of that because I think you've seen me clean things a million times with credit cutter at this point, but do want to show you that this is not a solid wood piece. It does have some particle board, so I'm painting it all. I'm not staining it. So if you're here to see me do my stain, I'm sorry, we're going to be painting. Started this project with flipping it upside down and realizing that there was so much more work to be had than I thought. The pieces were falling apart. There was no stability holding it together. I literally had to piece the bottom section by section off and then start hammering things in. You'll see, I do show you this. I think this is where whatever rodents were climbing up in there, and I'm like, we're gonna take some shims and cut them down to size and put in so we do not have to worry about that happening ever again. Never. However, there were also, you could see where people tried to fix it, where they put, nails and stuff in. It was just, I did not notice all this when I purchased it, okay? But for $30, it is what it is. And of course, I'm always forgetting about this wood glue. Oh. Once I got it cleaned out, I started just taking things apart, putting the wood glue where it needed to go, hammering stuff in here. These little pieces I was able to pry up enough and squeeze more wood glue down into it, and then really hammered them down so that way they wouldn't go anywhere. I completely pried the front off and the little bits and squeezed wood glue. I got so crazy with the wood glue, like I missed where the wood glue should have went. You'll see in just a second as I'm putting this back on here. Look at that, completely missed the top. Like it was, I was so stressed out about how much, look at that, just all that wood glue. Brandy. Listen, if y'all left by now, you're like, this girl don't know how to fix nothing. I completely understand. But if you're still here, we're rolling on. I completely wood glued these shims together and then put them and wood glued them into the sections so that way they weren't going anywhere. This laminate, or whatever you want to call it, was coming off the sides, so I squeezed it all along the edges and pried as much of it as I could back and forth to squeeze it down into the spots. And then I'm using clamps, all different sizes. I had to call all my reinforcements to help me hold this thing together. There was, I think I used every clamp I owned to hold the bottom together. I did not have any idea how bad it was. Now this one was split so bad I was able to take a piece of string and shimmy on in there in different little spots to try and get as much wood glue down as possible to hold this together. Once I was done with that, I loaded up my nail gun with some tiny little 1-inch brad nails and then reinforced everything with the brad nails all along the bottom, and came back in with some wood filler to really seal in any extra broken cracks or anything around the bottom. Then I'm taking my favorite 123 Bullseye primer and giving this just, some squirts. I wasn't worried about a thorough coverage on this. We got some, whatever this is, laminate, whatever, particle board. It's not solid wood. It's nice condition. However, some pieces do have some solid wood. I was worried a little bit about bleeding, but I was more concerned about making sure I had a consistent coverage with the paint on the piece. Once it dried, I brought it outside and started with my 2x flat white Rust-Oleum, and then I like to go over it with the chalked alt matte linen white. Don't ask me why, people. It's what I like. You spray paint how you want. I'm gonna do it like this. And for those of you who don't like spray paint, you're like, Brandy, oh, you're wait. Listen, I'm sorry. That's how you feel. You're welcome to skip. But I like spray paint, and I know some viewers do too. So you're getting spray paint here. Getting spray paint. I'm keeping the large handles, but I wanted to replace the little knobs, and we're also going to spray paint all of it this midnight blue color. I did save you that bit of spray painting, okay, but you will get to see them when they're all drying a little bit. I want to give these drawers, because here's where we're coming in with our paint, a little bit of a scuff sand, and then we're going to put some Dixie Belle Boss over this to make sure there's no staining or bleeding coming through. And I do a very light coat, let it dry for 30 minutes. You can do as many coats as you feel fuzzy inside to need. However, I just did one. Wasn't too concerned. I wasn't using a solid white on the drawers. I was using a blue. So, you know, I feel a little bit more fuzzy when I have colors instead of just plain. This is the beautiful blue we're going to use by Dixie Belle. Now, I do want to show you how I like to start this. I use a fork. I know some people are like, oh, you know. I have come to the conclusion that Dixie Belle paint is, and I'm sure other paint is, I have used other paints. This is what I like to use. I like using Dixie Belle's paint for my furniture. It is super thick. Look at this stuff. But to get it quickly stirred up, you see how it kind of seeps through the fork? I like to use that to give it a nice stir. When I'm doing that, it works faster for me. I'm about to get me a bunch of baby whisks and whisk it all. But I like to use a fork, you know, just in case. Little tip, listen, you stir it how you want, okay? But this is how I'm stirring it. I'm sharing it. Like it, don't like it, you know. I appreciate y'all's, you know. Anyhow, back to the painting. Nice coat. You see how the color changes here? I did mix a little bit of mountain blue, I think it is, with plaid. I did not want this all to just be one solid color because I'm going for that cottage farmhouse type feel. I wanted this to look a little worn, a little rustic. I wanted it to have different tones. I was not concerned about just solid overall coverage. I was just having fun with it. But here is the top of the desk once it all dried, just to give you an idea of what the different tones in it look like. I know, Brandy, you're not showing us. Listen, you're about to see something, okay? I'm sharing this with you, okay? This is what's going to eat up your film and your view time. We're going to take these stencils and use some plaid paints and create a beautiful design on the top. I started off by using Mod Podge and going over the entire piece. I let it dry for about 20 to 30 minutes. This will help stop any bleed when you're doing something like this. I have never done a stencil this large, this intricate, and with this many colors. I do like to use a lot of colors and a lot of different styles. I, you know, don't want to put myself in a box and just do one thing. However, this desk is for my daughter from my mom's house because my daughter does a lot of, you know, crafting. She's my kid. You know, she's crafty. My mom wanted something there, so my daughter wanted it blue, and I thought, you know, I want something to just inspire her, so I'm creating this on the top of the desk for her. I could not be any happier with the end result of this little design. To just finish it off and bring it to life a little bit more, I'm taking a dotting tool and just putting in some gentle little touches. You can get crazy, you can get wild, and do as many as you want. I'm just putting little tiny details in certain spots just to give it a little extra life. And I don't know why this works, but it does. I just like doing it. I'm just sharing it, you know, with you. You don't have to do it if you don't want to. I ordered this stencil separately. All of this is from Amazon, both stencils, by the way, in case you're wondering. They are both from Amazon. She believed she could, so she did. I let this dry overnight, a complete 24 hours before I did the sealing process. You'll see that in just a little bit. But while that's drying, we are getting on to the decoupaging the inside of the drawers. I like the decoupage around here. So I picked this packet up of paper for like $3.20 some cents at Hobby Lobby. It was on clearance. I was like, Christmas, you know, you find paper at Hobby Lobby that's cheap, you buy it. We decoupage a lot around here at the DIY Struggle. I love paper and napkins. I really love napkins. Anyhow, also thank you, big shout out to Plaid for giving me this wonderful box of stuff, because I'm about to squirt this whole bottle on the inside of all these drawers. And I love the squirt bottle Mod Podge. Oh my gosh, I love it so much. I need lots of it. Anyhow, I literally ripped the papers up and just pieced them together. Now, I don't have a reveal because when I did the reveal, these weren't fully cured, and you know, I will pop a picture in here later at the end. Yeah. To continue with that cottage, farmhouse, rustic feel, I thought, let's distress this, and took a 80 grit sandpaper to roughly the whole thing. I just kind of rubbed it down, even the top. I took some to the top. I do want to bring to your attention real quick though, let's take a pause. I usually use for my sealer this in, you know, the brush form. I use a brush usually to do the top, and seen other creators use this and swear by it, and thought, let's purchase it, and noticed there was some yellowing and some spots. It was absolutely what I get for bringing this in the house before it was completely dry. When I noticed this was happening, I brought that drawer in and started to use a paintbrush, and ended up with dog hair. A paintbrush piece fell off of it. It was a hot mess. Here's another little glob. There was definitely some yellowing. So just to bring those of you who have not used that aware, make sure if you do use the spray paint that you're paying attention to if it layers heavy, it could possibly leave you some yellow spots. I'm gonna go back to the brush to where I can control the thinness of the product. And just when I thought it couldn't get any worse, I seriously wish I could make this up. What are the odds that I come out here to stage this and there are little bird turds? Like, come on, man. Taking a giant duty on my desk. Oh, I left a little stain. Now I gotta fix it. Gotta be kidding me. And there's another one. What is happening? Come on, man. Oh my gosh. The freaking nightmare. To fix it, I'm just gonna sand the top even more. Like, I'm so done with this piece, people. Here you go. Here's the end of it. else. I thrifted this amazing desk for just $30. Yes, okay, it has some wear and some stains. I don't know what that is. Some definite dings, and I don't know, it looks like somebody rubbed its body or booty on the top and, you know, maybe kicked the bottom a little bit. There's some damage, people, but overall, look at the inside of this drawer. I mean, they're all this pristine. Really good condition. I was super happy about it. And to start, we're going to take our crud cutter. That's right, I got it right this week, people. Crud cutter, and we are going to clean this baby off. Honestly, I was pretty shocked at how not dirty it even was. I mean, yeah, the towel had a little bit of stuff on it, but overall, like, cleaning the whole piece compared to what I'm used to. But of course. Seriously? That wasn't on there very well. How I got this piece loaded into my car and into the patio, I cannot believe that knob did not fall off beforehand. It's a miracle, and I'm kind of happy about it because I want to use this hardware. But before I get to that, I do take just a plain warm water and go over the piece after cleaning it with a crud cutter to get any of this stuff off of there so there's no extra residue. And then I'm going to remove the hardware. And I know what you're thinking. You're like, why didn't you take that off first, Brandy? Well, listen, you clean your piece how you want to clean your piece. This is how I'm doing it. Once I get the stuff off, I then, you know, give it a little dip. You know, we dip it a little bit, clean off the hardware a little bit more. I just think it's easier to just kind of rub it down with the crud cutter in the process while I'm going along, and then I give it a dip. It's just, you know, it's how I'm rolling with it, people. Once I spray painted these, I let them dry and decided to move on to the desk. That's right, it's upside down. I like to try and start most projects upside down. I taped the top off because I'm going to sand that afterwards, and we're going to start using both of these. I'm gonna do the primer first, and then, well, I'm gonna do the bullseye first just for the stain blocker, and then we're gonna put the primer on, and then I'm going to apply this chalk paint. I know you're like, Brandy, that's a lot of layers. It's how I did it, and I love the finish. Okay, I do not trust certain things without putting a stain blocker on them because it causes me more work at the end of the day, and nobody wants to go back over a project. No one wants to do it. Now, I'm not sure how many of you like watching spray paint, so just for those of you like me that find it very satisfying, I do film a certain amount of it, and then I do exclude a certain amount of it. So I try to give y'all a little bit of what you enjoy. You know, some spray paint, I could watch spray paint, I could watch this all day, but I'm not going to do that to you. So this is flipped right side up after I let it dry, and then I'm going to go over it with the first two spray paints you've seen first, and then the third one last. The chalk paint, I'm doing just one coat upside, right upside. And then I took, once I finished all that, again, I tried to omit some of the spray paint. I took a clear mat and went over the entire piece. I know you're like, Brandy, Rust-Oleum, now Dixie Belle. Listen, I don't discriminate against what works. And I love Dixie Belle's Boss when I'm doing hand painting. It goes on like butter, and it is a great stain blocker when you're doing things like this with hand paint. So it also dries really quick, and I'm hand painting these drawers. So we're going to use these two colors from Dixie Belle, and I'm going to be blending them. Now, I have only done certain blends. I am not a professional, and as you can see, this paint is so thick. If you're not familiar with Dixie Belle paint, it is super, super thick. So have your spray bottles ready, and you're going to be needing extra brushes. You're going to need your regular brush. So I have my brush that's dipped in the one color, driftwood, and then the other one is dipped in the cotton, and then I have my blend brush, and I did one full coat, which is what you're seeing here, and then I let that dry before I went back in. But I tried to blend as much as possible. While this is my side hustle, I do not give like straight up blending tutorials and things like that. I do sell furniture on the side, and I do love to share those videos and experiences and what I've done with you. But if you're looking for more detailed information, there are channels that do that. One is Kristana. I am a huge fan of her, and part of this piece is inspired by some of the things I see her create. I wanted to do something like that for my daughter. That's who this piece is for, and this will be in my home. Another channel is Brush by Brandy, Katcha, and I think Flip It Furniture is another one. Those are just a couple that I watch if you're looking for more detailed information. I hope that helps you on your journey. Once they dried, I came back in and went again. Now, some people do not blend on the first go through. I feel like it leaves harsh lines, and I want to just do a gentle blend to start with, and then go back over in the layers and then start spraying and bring in my blend brush. And usually this is so tedious, and here's the thing: if you're gonna do this, and mine's not perfect, you'll see, you know, that there are, but it's staying in my home. I wasn't stressing about it being immaculate. I love the way this turned out. And if you're going to go about this, please keep in mind that when you're blending colors, it is a patience game, and sometimes you gotta walk away from your DIY. It could be a craft, it could be a piece of furniture, whatever it is. Don't be afraid to walk away from it. This is so tedious with the constant, you know, getting your blend brush, making sure it stays clean, and then you gotta go in and you gotta spin it, and then you spin it and you dip it and you dry it off and you spray it, and it is tedious, but at the end of the day, it turns out beautiful. This is why it's important to listen to the temperature warnings on labels, people. I did not catch these in time before the temperature hit like 94 in my area that day after I sprayed my clear coat, so shriveled up like a prune. I have an idea that is going to make this a happy mistake, but before we get there, welcome to the unicorn spit part of this video. This is my first time using unicorn spit. I have been dying to use this stuff. I'm super excited. That's right, I said it, super excited. I am excited to use this stuff and share it with you. I use 3 different techniques to apply this gel. I'm going to share all of that with you and what I think worked best. Also, if you're over here like Brandy, you sand at the top. That's right, I stripped it down. Listen, I used an orbital sander, I used an 80 grit, and then a 220 and a tack cloth, and I got all the stuff off and brought it in the house. There you go. You're all caught up. You didn't miss anything. Now, unicorn spit. There is a lot of information on unicorn spit, different, you know, videos of doing things. I decided we're going to try different things, so I'm going to prep myself and have some mixed with some water already, so as I go. I started with some dots. Be careful with this, because if you let them dots sit too long, this stuff is so concentrated that those little dots already left spots on that wood. It was done. It was over with. There was nothing I could do about it. I was like, woo, thank goodness I layered this, because we would have been able to see them dots. Now, I did not like this. See this little splotchiness that my gloves were making? I did not care for that at all. One of the downsides to using the gloves. I also started using a napkin and the glove, and this was the wrong thing to do with going back and forth as well. See how I'm leaving because you could see all those lines. Like, once I started smooshing in, you could still at the end of the day see where that line was left. So I was like, we're gonna have to try something else, because me just sprinkling it on like that and smooshing it with my hand is leaving the lines. So I then started leaving lines and using the sponge and blending and didn't realize that the yellow meant business when I put it on there and was going to start turning everything green. It's like, ah! So I was getting frustrated and had a mini baby heart attack and had to step away from it and let it dry. Once it dried, I was like, okay, we can deal with this. And came back in and started doing tiny spots like this and immediately using the sponge to spread the color. And then I was like, okay, we're layering here. Once you start getting layers, it's not leaving the lines like it was just straight up on the wood. So I'm like, okay, let's start blending. Let's play with this water. And brought the sponge in the water. Now, for whatever reason, the teal did not blend well with the sponge in the water, but the purple went really, really well with the sponge in the water. The teal did go on amazing with the paintbrush. I don't know why the color things mattered, but it did. I'm going to use Dixie Belle's Easy Peasy Wax to put on just the drawers. Remember, I used the Rust-Oleum Clear Matte on the entire white dresser, and I'm using the wax for the drawers. And then to do the top with the unicorn stain, they recommended using a spray oil based sealer. Now this stuff smells so bad. Oh my god, I think I took a couple years off my life. But before I sprayed, I wanted to show you, like, after this dried, there's like nothing coming off on that towel. Like, very minimal transfer. I was pretty impressed with it. Make sure you are wearing your protective gear spraying this stuff, people. It is, woo, it's rough. Once I was letting all that dry, I thought, let me come in with my accents and put a little love onto this desk for my daughter.